December 5th has become a monumental victory for the people of Iran as news broke that the Guidance Patrol, aka the Morality Police, which is in charge of enforcing the Islamic Republic's laws on personal behavior and dress, has been suspended. This news has quickly spread worldwide as citizens of the country and their sympathizers celebrate a victory the people have long longed for. However, a few people are concerned about the sudden disbandment of the police, as they see it as a way to protect the current governing regime and not an actual response to the cries of the people. But now the question on everyone's mind is, what is the real reason for the sudden disbandment? Is it because of all the protests and lives lost, or does the government have a sinister agenda? Initially announced by Iranian Attorney General Mohammad Jafar Montazeri, the news of the ban has brought joy to the many citizens of the country who have lived under the policing of the Morality Police. The news came as a response to the protest against the regime that have been going on since September 16th, when the murder of Mahsa Amini, a 22-year-old Kurdish Iranian woman in the custody of the Guidance Patrol, sparked massive rallies. This protest saw the burning of hijabs on the street by Iranian women as they chanted and sang for their freedom. The protests that started on September 16, 2022, sadly claimed the lives of more than 500 people and led to the arrest of about 18,000 civilians, with some even receiving the death penalty. The protests continued, undeterred by these deaths and arrests, as the people gained the attention of world leaders worldwide, such as President Joe Biden, former First Lady Michelle Obama, French President Emmanuel Macron, and New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. The protest has also captured the attention of young people worldwide, fighting for Iranian rights on social media and in the streets. Luckily for people, however, the Morality Police have finally been abolished, giving them hope for the future. Despite the abolition of the military police, though, the country's judiciary will continue to monitor public behavior and take appropriate action. But many are frightened by this new development, as they fear this is a move to retain the current Khamenei regime and not a move to better the country. The general's initial declaration sparked this panic because, as is usual for high-ranking Iranian officials, Montazeri dodged the question of whether or not Ayatollah Ali Khamenei had approved the decision. He also didn't say what would happen to women who defy the rule and go out without the hijab. This, however, is just the tip of the iceberg, as the people have long since stated that they were not protesting hijabs, but the complete state of the country as they seek to reform. A BBC interview with a random civilian put it best, with him saying, "A revolution is what we have. Hijab was the start of it, and we don't want anything less but death for the dictator and a regime change." This, however, has presented a problem, as Iran has been ruled by the same ruler for more than 30 years and has been governed by strict Islamic laws for longer, meaning a reform will not only be a tedious task, but a dangerous one. This is because the many senior members of the Islamic Republic have known for a very long time that caving to protesters is a sign of weakness. This was learned from the fate of the previous government. In January 1979, Iran's final monarch, Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, appointed Shapur Bakhtiar as prime minister to silence his critics. But Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, the unofficial leader of the movement to overthrow the Shah and take control of the country, was not convinced by this move, even though some of his closest friends had a lot of respect for the reformer Shapur. Khomeini rejected the change immediately and said that the new prime minister and his government were illegal. He also said the campaign would continue until the Shah was gone, a promise he kept to the end. Along with this, the leadership knows it has stayed in power too long without making meaningful changes. Ideally, the Green Movement of 2009 was the theocrats' final and best hope for change. This is when the demonstrators asked the question, "Where is my vote?" See, back in 2009, the people were still hoping to elect a reformer, Mir Hossein Mousavi, from the list of candidates endorsed by the supreme leader. However, sadly, the rigged election and the harsh response that followed, which claimed many lives, showed that the system was too harsh to change and would need a radical movement to shake it to its core. The regime also knows that the current wave of protests in Iran differs from the many others that have happened there over the past 4 decades. No other uprising has ever been so widespread or lasted so long, and none before this one have been brave enough to threaten the system's core. There has been no end to the uprising, despite the regime's killing of over 400 of its own people and the detention of almost 18,000 people, as the citizens stand their ground and look death in the face, all in the name of change. Since the often used methods of oppression seem to have failed, the regime seems to be making a deal by disbanding the guidance patrol, which makes you wonder, why would the clergy make such a concession if they knew the Shah wanted to stop the protests? This has led many to believe that the disbandment is not for the people, but for ulterior motives. And so now the people are asking, who is the disbandment for? Many people have thought that the disbanding must be a message to the rest of the world, especially the US. Despite its criticism of the West, the dictatorship has always focused much of its political theater on the US. Without diplomatic ties, this is the only way the regime can try to influence or even get the attention of Washington. Therefore, Tehran is responding to how it thinks the United States sees the events of the previous 4 months and is trying to appear concerned and good in the eyes of the world power. Many in Washington have misjudged the protest movement's seriousness and scale. There have been protests in every part of Iran, not just in areas with large ethnic minority populations, such as Baluchistan or Kurdistan, but also in the conservative city of Qom and in Khomeini, where Ayatollah Khomeini was born and where demonstrators recently set fire to his former home. As expected, university professors and students have held sit-ins. Even the most conservative merchants, the bazaris, have recently joined the protest by closing their stores to remember the victims of Bloody November, a week-long rebellion in which riot police killed hundreds of people across the country. Even though protesters are shouting, "Death to the dictator," US authorities and many former opinion leaders have focused on the role of women and girls in the present movement as though they were the only issue at play. This could be the reason for disbanding the morality police, as it would be a perfect way to portray the regime as changing and put it in the good graces of the US. Iran thinks its best chance of getting through the current situation is to make things normal with the West, as there is a lot of pressure on the government from within and beyond. A commission has been set up to look into the violence against the protesters because of a recent resolution at the UN Human Rights Council. After this, it was said that 115 disgruntled members of the Iranian military were arrested during a recent crackdown on dissension within the military. To add fuel to this already raging flame of change, relations between Iran and the West have worsened due to Tehran's continued backing of Russia's conflict in Ukraine, despite Moscow's mounting problems. The government wants to turn things around by showing that it is open to change. By removing some restrictions, Tehran hopes to show Washington that it has listened to what the protesters have asked for, which might make the US and the EU rethink their positions. This then poses the biggest threat of all, as it would leave the people of Iran to fight for their futures without backing from other countries, as their protests would now be seen as an after effect of an already solved problem or an act of terrorism. And sadly, it might be working. Tehran knows it can trick the US into not taking the movement in Iran seriously as long as its leaders keep denying that it is about more than just a protest against a strict dress code. And as such, this proposes a dark and scary future for the people of that region. However, the people of Iran are strong and rebellious, and we can only pray that their wishes are granted soon. To that end, what do you think? Is this all a plot to silence the people? Or do you think it's a genuine move to better the country? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. And while you do that, check out this next video.